Cryptography is all about secret keys that need high-quality entropy to be truly random. NetRandom from Whitewood Security delivers pure quantum entropy on demand across the entire data center and out to the cloud. Think NTP, but for quantum entropy. Inoculate your applications from making weak crypto keys, all without having to change a line of code. Visit getnetrandom.com to learn how you can take control of your entropy supply and ensure crypto security today. Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, protecting applications, connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/PSW. Onapsis is the leading provider of solutions to protect ERP systems from cyber attacks. Customers can secure their SAP and Oracle business-critical platforms from espionage, sabotage, and financial fraud risks. Visit them on the web at onapsis.com. The SANS Institute, the most trusted source for computer security certification training and research. Visit SANS.org to explore their full curriculum and latest training offerings. Pick one. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Do I have more? I think I have more announcements. I think I have one. At least I have a slow. Hold on.
Are there words in front of you, Paul?
They're coming. Hold
words.
on. That was the mixed guest intro.
Words.
That's scroll it. Words. Word.
Words.
Words.
Oh man, he's having it. You should not rely on the teleprompter, Mick.
I did it. So I read Mick's intro off the cuff. Chris Martin's coming on from Logarithm, excuse me, to do a webcast on December 13th, securityweekly.com/logarithm. Larry Pesce, who's right here, is coming on a webcast, securityweekly.com/pony for Pony Express. They're going to be awesome. You should subscribe. Great information in both of those webcasts that you'll want to hear. So do that. Okay.
Yes.
Well, there was an Apple vulnerability, which after I've consumed all this information, my thoughts on this is that it's totally lame.
It's not really a vulnerability as it's a misconfiguration, I would say. But can misconfigurations be vulnerabilities?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they're absolutely vulnerabilities. Just define your terms and move on.
I had a really good link to this. Hold on. Someone did a really great technical write-up.
Oh, yeah, I put that link up like 2 days ago.
Was it you?
Scroll down.
Oh, that's awesome.
Was it this one?
Hey, look, there's not Kevin. Hey, man.
Hey, Not Kevin's here. Welcome, Not Kevin.
Hey, introduce Not Kevin.
Yay.
I will.
There's a dude here, and it's not Kevin?
Not Kevin. How's it going, Not Kevin?
Oh, it's going that good, huh?
You're muted, not Kevin.
I don't know how to use technology.
Technology.
Yeah.
Is that apple juice or
Apple using?
Is that apple juice or is it a urine sample or is it beer? What are you drinking?
This is the white birch Berliner Weiss.
Oh, very nice.
How is it?
Excellent.
Excellent.
Only from the finest glassware that he found at the water cooler.
Which means he's still at work.
Yes.
I live at work. My desk is
actually... He's a dedicated man of science.
So there was a great write-up that went into basically a security researcher followed the code as to why this vulnerability existed. And I will tweet it out. It was the best resource that I found on this vulnerability. Very good technical write-up. And now it's
called Why Blank Gets You Root.
Yes, thank you.
It's number one on my list of stories.
Your stories, not where I was looking, which was in Larry's stories, which are not Jeff's stories.
No.
Because Jeff and Larry are two totally different people. Thank you very much, Jeff. Objective C. I don't have do you know the researcher's name, Jeff, that published this?
I could click on the link and see.
Yeah, I don't see his name.
So the first one was Chase. Shethan177, who reported it to the Apple developer forums.
Yeah, but the real hero is whoever wrote this post, though.
Who wrote this post?
Who wrote this post? I want to give him credit.
I want to say it's the guy, Patreon.
Oh no, was it Patrick Wardle? It was Patrick Wardle. Okay, It was Patrick. We've had him on the show. He is like the expert in OS X security, so it doesn't surprise me that he did in fact write this post. And it is the best technical write-up. Jeff, I'm glad you linked to it because I failed in that why blank gets you root.
I got your back.
Thank you. My question, and I probably should have posed this question to Patrick.
It's your story number 7, by the way.
Oh, it is. Oh, I did have it in there. Okay, thank you. So
get the damn glasses. And
my question is, a lot of people have said, well, the root password only becomes blank if you go into like your system settings and click the lock and enter root and then don't enter a password. My question is, if malware, how does malware simulate that behavior so that malware can actually set the password? When I tested it, I could not just go to a terminal shell after upgrading to High Sierra. If I went to a terminal shell, if I entered SU- and I tried to enter a password, nothing would work. Even after I went to system settings and set my root password to blank by entering root and just clicking OK twice, you'll do more than once. When I went back to the terminal shell, SU- or SU- space root, it didn't work. It still required a password. So my question is, how can malware simulate that behavior?
Better than you, apparently.
Yes, better than. I mean, I'm assuming that you could, just as in any operating system environment, hook the system calls to simulate my clicks and interaction with the GUI.
Sure.
So malware could essentially set your root password, and it doesn't have to set it to blank. It can set it to whatever
you can set
it wants to. Correct. No, that was my question.
For the record, this does not work on El Capitan.
No, it does not.
Because I just tried it.
There was some speculation as to if the issue exists only in upgrades or clean installs. Does anyone know definitively if it's a clean install of High Sierra, if it still has this issue or not?
I was successfully able to do it in an upgrade. So,
yeah, me too. Mine was an upgrade.
It is also important to know that this was patched yesterday. So if you have not grabbed the latest patch for your OS X device, I highly suggest it.
Right. Well, let's put it this way.
I have to say,
the patch was released yesterday. Whether or not folks have actually patched it may be a different story.
And by yesterday, we mean November 29th, for those of you listening in the days and weeks to come.
And the patch doesn't require a reboot. Right. And Apple patched it pretty fast. I mean, I will give Apple props here for patching this really quickly. However, I will take some points away from Apple for not having a public open bug bounty for OS X. I believe they do have a bug bounty, but it's a closed program. And no disrespect to the people in the closed program.
Right.
Who knows what restrictions are put on them, and how that works, or where they're steered towards in order to get bug bounties.
So maybe that's your question that you started this with, Paul, the question of whether it's a vulnerability or not. What you're really asking is it a bug or not, and would it qualify for a bug bounty, open or closed?
Clearly, it's a feature.
I believe it is a vulnerability. I think it's a very reliable privilege escalation vulnerability that could likely be exploited if you were to get some malicious software contracted on your system through another mechanism. Everything I've read and tested with this vulnerability, it's not remotely exploitable. The user has to take some action to put malicious software, or you have to somehow contract malicious software outside of the scope of this vulnerability on your system. It would then use this vulnerability to obtain escalated privileges.
Yep. And or control a GUI to be able to make that happen.
Which, I mean...
Sounds like there should be a medical analogy in there somewhere.
No, certainly not. Which, I mean, a lot of people have administrator access on their Macs anyway, or when you download something from the internet on OS X, it asks you, hey, you downloaded this from the internet. Are you sure you want to run it? 99.9% of the people all the time without fail. Oh, yes, run this.
Yes.
Run this. It came from a trusted source. It's fine.
Now, I will say that having the administrative rights on your Mac is not the end-all, be-all, given that there are times, depending on how your system is configured, if you want to copy something in the applications folder, it needs you to authenticate with your current users.
They have improved upon that over the years.
Yeah,
it prompts you for your password. However, if you I guess you'd still need elevated privileges to put a keystroke locker to grab the user's password.
Right.
So
right.
I guess it was significant privilege escalation
right,
vulnerability.
Right. And the other ones, if you're at the command line, you want to run in something that's privileged, you need to use sudo. You may not have a user's password to make that happen.
Correct.
So if you can control a GUI, you could enable a root account, which would give you the ability to have an account on that system with elevated privileges with the password of your choosing that you don't need to do sudo with.
Correct.
So significant privilege escalation for it.
Yeah, I mean, even if I don't think the initial dialog, I don't know if the initial dialog box, when I tested it, I changed my username to root. I left the password blank. I clicked OK. I did it again. I clicked OK. The password was still blank, and my root password was set to blank. I don't know if you enter a password, does that become your password? Or do you have to set it to blank and then go change your password? In either case, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter, right? The attacker is going to control the value of your root password, whether they have to set it to blank the first time or not, right? It doesn't.
I think it's specified in that article. I think he goes through all the permutations of how it works and what works. So read the article.
That Jeff and I both linked to.
Yes, but I posted it like 2 days ago.
Yes.
So, I mean, is this a big deal?
I was more interested after reading that article in wondering, having worked for a software company for a while, where was the SDLC? Where was the QA? I mean, stuff's always going to happen, but this seemed kind of like something that should have been caught early on and almost like a design phase, because it seemed like more of like a logic error.
Yeah,
the way I was reading it.
I agree. I think it does more so call into question Apple's security practices specific to their operating system more so than this flaw being really bad or not, right? I think the major news story here is how easy it was introduced, not caught, and then exploitable.
Now, and I saw some chatter on Twitter. I forget who it was. I apologize. Otherwise, I would give a shout out. But somebody I was back and forth with was saying that they had seen this years ago, and even like months ago or something like that. It was being advertised on a discussion forum as basically a feature, basically a way to help people reset their accounts or something like that.
Interesting.
I think I have a link to that article too, but I don't know which one it is, or it might be buried within the. Actually, I'll find it and I'll put it up there. How's that?
Awesome. Thank you. There are reports
I believe
that it
I
was
saw
found.
that too.
Yeah, it was found earlier this month.
Yep. On the Apple developer forums. It's in that article too.
Yep. Yeah,
First thing.
Yeah, it is in there.
Yep. November 13th.
There you go. But somebody else on Twitter was saying that they had known about it years ago. That it was known. It was a known way for like the help desk to help people out. So it was a feature.
Now, what's interesting is if you have iCloud and someone else gains control of your iCloud account and you set a firmware password through iCloud, you lock that device. How do you get around that? That goes beyond this vulnerability. This vulnerability is in the operating system. That potentially locks you out of the operating system. I know someone that's stuck in this situation right now. So if anyone has any comments, I probably should reach out to Patrick.
Asking for a friend?
Asking for a friend.
Yeah.
It's not me. It's not me.
Right.
It is actually for a friend.
Right. Pick a good password.
I did not get drunk and lock myself out of my Mac.
Because the password was
password. Right.
Yep.
It was password 123.
That's right. Well, your firmware lockout is 4 digits, so brute forcing is probably. I don't know what brute force protections are in play. It's an interesting question.
Huh.
Oh, so in that case, the password was 1234.
1234. Yeah. Right. Password for my luggage.
0666.
Yeah. Anyway.
Next story.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be more interesting than it really was, but to be honest with you, I was hoping for some.
No, I think it was damn good, damn interesting. Damn interesting.
Larry, what do you got?
Jeff and I have a story, his number 2, my number 1, was the who was the NSA contractor arrested for leaking the shadow broker's hacking tools.
So the question is who, or the question is
who?
How?
Yeah, it's who.
So a contractor for the NSA was arrested allegedly for leaking shadow brokers tools, but they did not release any names.
So enter Brian Krebs. Does he have a name?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Enter Brian Krebs. He allegedly has a name of. Where is it? I just lost it. A gentleman by the name who I'm going to butcher. Damn it. Jeff, you got it? You got it handy?
Scroll.
Scroll.
I'm not helping you out this time, Larry.
Gennady Sedelkinov.
Some good butchering there.
Yeah.
It's an Irish name.
Yes.
So how did he come to discover this information? I'm sure it's all in the Brian Krebs blog post, but
yes.
Summarize for us, Larry.
So it was reported to Brian Krebs about 3 months ago from an independent consulting company who wanted him to investigate and corroborate and such. It sort of fell off the radar a little bit, and the story in the New York Times showed up about someone being arrested for the shadow brokers leak, and that it was nameless. And then Brian started to put these two together. Put these two pieces together and went, holy crap, whoever that was that submitted it 3 months ago actually may have been right. So he wrote this article about what had happened. Turns out with the shadow brokers leak, there was a bunch of documents that pointed to tailored access operations with a whole bunch of various pointers to locations and logos and all this type of stuff. And then some additional tying of documents together. And by looking at all of the metadata of all that documentation, there were 3 names that stood out. 2 that worked for the NSA and 1 who was an independent consultant.
And it's always the independent consultant.
And it was the contractor rather.
Contractor.
So that was the assumed contractor. So
now, Larry, I haven't had a chance to read this story. Is this connected? There seems to be so many contractor stories at the NSA recently.
Sure.
Is this the same one who they think files were taken via Kaspersky and uploaded up?
I think they mentioned that in the article.
Yeah, they did, and I don't know how
it's
much.
Not the main. Yeah. It's not the main one, but they wondered if that might have also happened. I think is the way it was framed.
Right. So the interesting one, reading this article, going through, there's one paragraph in here that I thought that was pretty interesting. Was Krebs on Security was first made aware of the metadata in the shadow brokers leak by Mike Poor, Rob Curtin-Seifert, and Larry Pesci. All three are security experts within Guardians. Hey.
Nice.
So yeah, we figured this out 3 months ago and gave it to Krebs to vet, and apparently he did.
So you didn't know you were going to see your name in the article until you're like stumbling upon it, huh?
No, we had an idea. We provided it to him and basically let him run with it. And if there were any questions afterwards, how we did the analysis and any of that type of stuff that we were happy to follow up. And he recreated all the analysis and was able to recreate what we had done and came up with the same answers.
That's really cool.
Yep. So cool. It's like, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was reading the article. I was like,
famous
I know him.
Yeah, I know that guy.
I know that guy.
I was reading the article and I was like, I know that guy. That's Mike Poor. Wait. Yeah, but no, the article raises some really interesting questions as well. I thought was that thinking about the way NSA does some of their operations was you start doing the OSINT on Glenn, the contractor. You find out he's a database guy. And why did the database guy have access to all sorts of classified documents that wasn't maybe in a database? And thinking about the principal least privilege and where was the actual breakdown that happened that allowed this gentleman to be editing documents and leaving his trail of metadata in these documents that arguably, based on his job function and what his expertise is, should have never had any insight to?
Well, it's really interesting but I really can't comment on this at all.
I figured as much. So, yeah. So, principal least privilege? Sure.
In principle,
right?
That's right.
Yep.
Does anyone have an HP laptop?
I used to.
I do, but I
was that the one that tragically died here in the studio?
I'm kidding. No, that was a Dell. I'm sorry. I think I have one in the house somewhere.
I do have one, but it's been quite some time since I've actually used it. It sits at my ham shack and is kind of flaky. So
maybe it has the HP Touchpoint Analytics client.
Oh.
Which apparently sends telemetry data. They haven't qualified in the article exactly what telemetry means. It could be what application you're using. Who knows? Users report that it's consuming 95% of the CPU at various points.
Maybe that's why that laptop is a steaming pile of shit.
And the HP installed the software without users' knowledge. There are instructions on how to remove it. I'm not sure exactly what data is being leaked, but it has been shown to be sending data back to HP. And it kind of underscores the point that when I buy a device, I like to think that it's mine, and I can control what software is being installed on it.
Yeah.
It's not so much the case when we look at Samsung and some of their phones. You can't uninstall certain apps without jailbreaking the phone.
Yeah.
And all of these laptops from HP and Dell and other major manufacturers have software installed. I mean, you remember back in the day when you buy a laptop, this was really bad.
Yeah.
The bloatware, they call it, right?
You wipe it and reinstall the OS right from the get-go.
Right.
And then, of course, if you want drivers, you have to install the third-party utilities. Oh, God.
Yeah, or the utilities from the motherboard or computer manufacturer. Oh, God.
And then you may end up with your bloatware right back again.
Exactly.
And typically that software gets flagged by some antivirus systems, is what I found as well.
And imagine having to do that with 15 floppies. Just saying.
Yep. Or more, 32 floppies for Windows 95.
Yeah. Or, I mean, you could just install Linux and avoid that problem altogether.
Yeah, exactly. Slackware from 3 floppies. What?
I mean, this unfortunately is not an uncommon thing.
No.
I mean, it was Lenovo just a couple months ago were caught with the whole Superfish bloatware thing that was also shipping up a whole bunch of sensitive information.
And I think
they were actually slapped with a pretty big absolutely not by the FTC. I'm wondering if the same thing's going to happen with HP here.
Likely it will. The FTC I think, in my opinion, has done a good job of slapping companies around that are exhibiting this behavior, Kevin. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think they have done a good job.
I mean, they're, for all the way you look at it, I mean, they're actually harming user security. They're installing software without their knowledge. That software generally opens up different attack vectors or can just damage the machine outright. Or, at least in Superfish's particular example, it was pretty much killing the outbound bandwidth of the machine.
Or invading the user's privacy.
Yeah, it all kind of encompasses that this is you bought the laptop. You didn't buy all this bloatware with it. Or I guess technically you did if you read the license. I guess it's kind of an interesting argument.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Whoa. Who reads the license
agreement?
Well, I guess.
Well, and it gets worse than that because I think most of us in the U.S. and many other countries are used to having bandwidth that you may not notice the communications, right? You're like, whatever, my bandwidth's fine. But there are some parts of the world that don't have that sort of bandwidth, right?
That's right.
And so, it's a real impact.
Yeah, we'll have bandwidth. We just won't have control over what we have bandwidth to anymore.
Well, I mean, it's
exactly.
we're it's kind of an oversimplification of the U.S. and its infrastructure, I think. I mean, most people don't have what we'd call high-speed internet here. People are metered.
Yep.
I mean, your high speed is 3 megs a second. And that's only available in most metropolitan areas. You start going into the Midwest or Central, people are using point-to-point and satellite more often than not.
Yep. Just think about John. Like, what was he doing for so many years? They had a T1 ran to the house.
Yeah.
So they could get high-speed internet.
And
but
that's metered.
I don't know. He almost doesn't count.
They're automatic. That caused a huge issue.
Yeah.
I've got a buddy that lives somewhere in the Midwest. Maida used to work where I used to work, and he does a lot of forensic stuff, and he's on a DSL line. So he's sometimes taking days to just download the files that he needs to look at.
Mm-hmm. God forbid somebody doesn't pick up the phone in the middle.
Partially that's by
downloading
choice, I will
wait.
add. He could upgrade, but he likes, he's a tinfoil hat kind of guy, wants to live out in the woods. So the best he's willing to get is a DSL line.
No, I think that actual issue, despite that, there's a lot of issues here, right? There's certainly a massive violation of privacy. There's certainly introducing security vulnerabilities into your system that you should not have to deal with. And then beyond that, the bandwidth consumption issue is not an equal playing field, right? Some of us, we're very spoiled. We use it for our industry. We might have a fiber running to the house and everything, but that is not universal by any means. And that's that's what everybody's pointing out. I think you're right, Kevin. I said it was not such an issue in the U.S., but actually that's not correct. The U.S. is not even an equal playing field across the board. So
we're actually one of the worst countries when it comes to averages of internet speed, which is ironic, to say the least.
Well, and that's a population thing too. I think, Kevin. If you look at it, depends on how you look at the data, right? Like more people with slow internet, and it just means we have more people than in a higher concentration.
Stop trying to win my argument.
Not necessarily. We're not that big a country, population-wise.
It's true.
Well, I think that conversation is going to digress into lots of non-security issues. So,
like net neutrality.
Yeah. I wrote my senators on that.
When we had it, so I'll drink to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woohoo! And it's like just as I'm about to dump cable too.
Damn
right?
it!
Like I am so ready. I'm so ready.
Speaking of which, we've had multiple requests to do a podcast, maybe a little bit outside of the security realm.
Yeah.
To do cutting the cord.
Yeah. Like I'm ready. Like like Sling was the app that I just purchased a subscription to, where I'm like, yeah, okay, now I definitely don't need cable. Like I'll give a little bit of money to Sling. Mm-hmm. I'll put an antenna in my attic, and I'll use my HD home run device. And we'll talk about this in a segment. That's fine. And I'm like, I'm ready. But now, if we don't have net neutrality anymore, the cable provider it's in its financial best interest to push me to keep my cable subscription. So what does that mean? Are those services such as Sling and Netflix and Amazon and potentially Kodi, which is other issues, but yeah, the elephant in the room, right?
Right.
These other services, will they YouTube? You know,
they just rate limit those into the ground.
Exactly. So it's a pretty clear-cut issue. I don't know if anyone wants to take the other side of this debate. Like I don't get it. I don't know if the people that are like, yeah, whatever, like that's going to happen, it's beyond our control. But I think it's something we should fight for.
So I think the providers of content, such as ABC, NBC, and all the cable providers and such, it's in their interest for their business model, because so many people are trying to cut the cord.
Yep.
And they've got to maintain some viability in the market, so that for them, this whole lack of net neutrality is a good thing, where they can charge more to have higher speeds for these various services.
Like, you want to have Netflix and Sling and all that stuff. You can give us an extra $50 a month, and you'll be totally fine.
Right. And
okay. So that I'm still giving you right.
You don't want cable anymore. We totally get it. We totally understand. You can go do your thing, and we're going to rate you into the ground. Oh, you want access to those things? That'll be another $50 a month.
Yep.
That makes them viable back into the marketplace. And
that's capitalism,
right?
And in some ways, it's kind of sounding like the banking bailout. Telecoms are too big to fail. We got to prop them up. And if you think about, for again a segment of the population that has investment portfolios and 401k plans, look how many of those are tied into telecom companies and how well they do. So there's definitely an economic issue here beyond just the pure capitalism and greed type of element. From what I've heard, it's we can bitch and complain and protest all we want, but it's gonna happen.
Well, I disagree with it happening. I don't want to get deep into the politics. I did write my representatives. That's going to fall on deaf ears, I think. But you know, in terms of cutting the cord, just for a minute, I've had an HD antenna on my roof for 12 years now. I mean, I cut the cord years ago, and haven't regretted it since. I may regret it now. The rules may change, and I would be very disappointed.
So what else are we talking about?
Speaking of
disappointment?
Financial
Crisis and disappointment on a happy note.
Or financial interests. Paul, you've got this cryptocurrency mining script thing.
Yeah. Is that a DVD drive in your laptop?
No, it's the slot for one, but it's been removed many years ago and replaced with disk.
Oh.
Yeah, dude, this is a mid-2011 MacBook Pro.
Wow.
Yeah, about this Mac. MacBook Pro 13-inch, early 2011.
Wow.
With 16 gigs of RAM.
Got your money's worth from that one.
And it's still going. I would love to replace it, but I can't justify it because I'm still using the muck out of it.
Right.
And it works fine. It works fine for everything I needed to do, including multiple VMs at any given time.
So you can invest in some cryptocurrency and then use that for a laptop upgrade.
Exactly.
Right. It's beautiful.
Exactly.
It's beautiful, man.
Exactly. I mean, this is the people complain about Macs all the time, but this is one of the best investments I've ever made. Some minor upgrades over the years, and it's been great. But it wouldn't do so good at mining cryptocurrency. And I find this kind of interesting in that the way the cryptocurrency thing has evolved is that, you know, having mining scripts still running is kind of cool, given that there's more than one cryptocurrency you may want to be interested in nowadays. I mean, you know, clearly everyone's heard about Bitcoin, but the practicality of mining Bitcoin on any commodity hardware anymore is crazy.
No.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, the time, power, money trade-off is just not there. It's getting better all the time, but it's still not there.
Unless you trick everyone's browsers.
Right.
In this article,
unless you get it for free. And then,
unless you get it for free and take advantage of other people's computers.
There is the concept of joining large pools, but even there, the practicalities, you know, you're competing against massive data farms in Asia that are running, you know, lots of GPUs and ASIC-based hardware. It's just not there.
Yep. So that said, I didn't read the article, but did it mention what cryptocurrency it was mining?
I'm not sure.
Let's see. Because there is still some cryptocurrency that is worth potentially mining, like Bitcoin
Monero,
Cash,
perhaps.
Monero, Ethereum. Those types of things still do have some benefit in that the blockchain is still array enough on, and there's some easy work units to complete.
Right. Well, if you designed it right, you could send down to your mining scripts to mine whatever currency was your flavor of the month or whatever.
Right. Or as part of a pool, that it divides that workload between all sorts of stuff and switches.
These 50,000 nodes, you go do this cryptocurrency. These 50,000, you do these.
Yeah, exactly. And then you reap the benefits in the pool. So, yeah, it's been. I hadn't followed Bitcoin or anything for a long time, but I just recently had a vested interest in it. In that, many years ago, Winter Olympics. What was that? Last Winter Olympics was what?
Oh boy, you're asking hard questions now, Larry.
You're talking about Sochi?
Yes.
14. Because
2014.
Yeah.
had an incident there.
That's why I remembered it, because Matt Lauer was there.
So
That's how I remembered it.
About 2013, as a joke, I stood up a really small GPU rig and started mining Dogecoin. And then I amassed like a couple 100,000 Dogecoin because it was really easy to mine. And then some folks decided that it was a really great idea to the Jamaican bobsled team qualified for the Winter Olympics. Cool runnings. But they had no money to get there. So some folks said, hey, let's take donations to get them to be able to go. And the way we're going to take donations is we're going to take donations of Dogecoin. So people went and bought Dogecoin, and because there was a demand, the price skyrocketed for Dogecoin, and I sold all of my Dogecoin for Bitcoin. I sold a couple 300,000 Dogecoin for Bitcoin, and I remember cashing out some Bitcoin at the time to pay for the investment that I had made, and I broke even, and I didn't think much of it. And a couple weeks ago, Bitcoin hit $5,500, and I'm like, man, I was doing that stuff and cashed out when it was like $300 a Bitcoin, like when it started to go up a little bit because of ransomware. And I'm like, man, I wonder if I think I have like 0.00001 Bitcoin. And I fire up my Bitcoin wallet and it tells me how much I have, but the blockchain is like 4 years out of date. And I had 0.288 Bitcoins. And Bitcoin was at $6,300.
So you have a couple thousand?
That was just over $2,000. I'm like,
Yeah.
But with this wallet, I had no idea that I like even should care about was just
You
over
just
$2,000.
found 2,000?
It got better. It got better. So by the time I finally got the
Bitcoin's.
by the time I got the blockchain downloaded and could actually do something with it, it hit just shy of $10,000.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. Because it's at $10,000.
Yeah. It hit $11,000 yesterday, and it's back down to just over $10,000. But it hit just under $10,000, and I cashed half of it out. And what a merry fucking Christmas it was in the Pesci household. No, seriously.
So how do you cash it out?
So I used I transferred all of the funds to a wallet called BitPay. And part of the reason was that I'm like, I have money. Where am I going to spend it? Like, how am I going to get this out? Do I move it to cash and then it becomes taxes and all that stuff? So I'm like, what vendors use Bitcoin? And like the first one that I knew of was Adafruit. I'm like, $1,000 order at Adafruit. Oh my God. I'm like getting awkward boner. And so I go to, so I'm like, what vendor do they use? And sure enough, they use BitPay. So I'm like, great, get the BitPay wallet, get everything transferred over to my BitPay wallet and go spend stuff. And turns out I can only actually spend $275 for all of the things that I wanted at Adafruit. So I'm like, what do I do with the rest? And I'm messing around with the client at the bar a week and a half ago when we were at Sans Hackfest. And it was midnight and Bitcoin had just hit like $9,500. And I'm like, buy Amazon gift card. How does this work? Blunk. And I click the buy Amazon gift card. It's like, how much Amazon gift card do you want? Well, fuck it, $1,000. Book. Here's your code. Apply it to your Amazon account. Boom. Logs in Amazon, applies it, and I have $1,000 credit at Amazon. I'm like, well, that was fucking easy. That worked great. I'm like, damn. I guess I know where all the kids are getting their gifts from this year for Christmas.
Black Friday, Cyber Monday at Amazon with Larry Pesci.
Hell yeah. And then, so that was at just about $9,000. And the other day we were sitting down and my wife and I were talking about, what else to get the kids for Christmas and stuff. And so we ordered some stuff that we needed. And I'm like, well, all right, well, we'll get some other stuff. And I'm like, I wonder what Bitcoin prices is. And Bitcoin was about $10,200 per. I'm like, buy $1,000 at Amazon. Like, what do we want to buy for the kids now? Trampoline? Yes. So yeah, it was like.
I hope the kids don't listen.
No, they don't. They don't.
Okay, good.
They don't. But yeah, it was like, and it was one of those deal of the day trampolines too. So it was like 75% off.
Yeah.
Like, yes. So that's how I cashed out. You can also with BitPay, not that I get any money from them aside from my cashing out of Bitcoins. You can also get a credit card from them that pulls from your Bitcoin wallet.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I just sent it all to. I used it at Adafruit and then I used it at Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, that's great.
Like that was easier than I thought.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Small investment paid off.
Yeah. Like small investment and sit on it and I look like a friggin' hero. No,
we only bought tons of Bitcoin when.
Oh my gosh.
It was, or mined it when it was mineable.
Yeah, exactly. Well, of course, now you just.
Well, I think what's really stunning is at the end of 2016, Bitcoin was less than $1,000.
Yeah. And largely the reason why I got pushed up that far was still because of ransomware. You want to unlock your system, that'll be one Bitcoin.
Right. So now we're sitting in a world where Bitcoin's peaked $10,000 and come just shy of that. But I mean that's a 1,200% rise. It's insane.
Other stories that we have this week to round out our news.
To give you an idea, right now Bitcoin is at just about $9,800, which has dropped from 11,000 as of yesterday, day before yesterday.
And did your wife tell me that you adopted me, by the way, Larry?
No. I don't have nearly that much Bitcoin left. And I think what little I have left, I'm just going to sit on until it hits $20,000.
There you go. Hey, back to Paul.
Kevin is waving his hand like he wants to say something.
I read an article about Bitcoin today that I thought really kind of put a lot of this in perspective outside of the rise in price. The entire network now uses more power than Ireland, and a single transaction on the Bitcoin network uses more power than your house does in a week.
Nice. And I just saw something today that I didn't get to digest because it was literally while we were sitting down to the show, that there was an article posted to Pastebin about some critical flaw in the blockchain about Bitcoin, and it wasn't necessarily terribly senile. It was pretty senile and that type of stuff, so I didn't get a chance to read it. But the comments were like, this dude's on crack. Mm-hmm. So, but... Sorry, moving along.
Other stories. Joff.
Me? Oh, I got nothing.
Jeff.
I didn't post any stories. Let's go to the NSA story. I think that's really awesome, by the way. Let's go to that. No, we did that already.
Well, there's another one.
There's two. There's one on the red disk. We could talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
It's your story, Paul. Go.
Yeah, but you used to work there, so you could explain it way better than I can.
Which means I can't say a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
So ZDNet has reported another data leak associated with the NSA. It's a disk image when unpacked and loaded as a snapshot of the hard drive dating back to May 2013 from a Linux-based server that forms part of the cloud intelligence sharing system known as Red Disk. That's all I know. Anyway.
It appears
that it's something that was out there available that shouldn't have been.
Yeah, and doing the folks that did some analysis and/or looked at what Red Disk was all about was that it looks like it was supposed to be a quote customizable cloud system, so that they could have a machine with Red Disk on it that could basically share intelligence across multiple. As you go bonk, and now I've got this sharing system type of thing. That's the way I'm reading it.
Mm-hmm.
So not really a big deal.
Not a good couple of weeks for our government and leaving data on S3. Wasn't it just last week? I think it was the same organization that found Red Disk also found that DoD left 1.8 billion scraped social media posts.
That's correct, Kevin.
Dope.
So do you want to segue into the history and reinvention of network access control, NAC?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Go for it.
How is that being reinvented in your mind, Joff?
Well, it's been reinvented so many times over the years, it's hard to really get a perspective around it, right? But the interesting part is, and this article claims, right, that when you reread the piece that this IT managers in the past shared that experience about NAC products, the author of this article was struck how little it was changed, right? Networks are still protected on the macro level by keeping systems updated with the latest patches, blah, blah, blah. But I was interested in how much had changed on the micro level, how homogeneous networks were back then, right? That was then. NAC have come a long way, but the products have improved. The endpoint and security landscape, I'm quoting from the article here, obviously, have become way more complex. We have lots more devices. So, the interesting thing to me is access control vendors have been fighting for this for years, right? And the 802.1x client has been the core of it. And what we can do with Ethernet-based authentication before something actually enters the network. And the biggest vulnerability that has existed for many, many, many years, and this is me talking now and not the article, has been that so many devices don't have the 802.1x enabled supplicant software, and so they become exceptions in the NAC world, right? And those exceptions become possibilities for exploiting flaws and vulbanalyties in networks, right?
The exceptions are your downfall. Think printers.
Yeah, printers, perfect example, right? And I've been on several networks in the past year or two. Surprise, surprise. But one of the access methods that I used was to go after either printers or wireless access points. And I actually found a wireless access point sitting under a desk that I unplugged, plugged my own device into it, and got myself a DHCP lease after mimicking the MAC address, but that's not a big deal these days, and was able to explore quite a bit of that network as a result of essentially a whitelisted media access control address or Ethernet address, right?
Right, because
so
everybody needs to be able to communicate with the access points and or the printers.
That's right, and this is the big downfall with NAC, right? So, sort of segueing back, the advance that has happened over time, and there's Cisco, there are others that have gone into this world where they tried to profile devices before, and during network admission, where they said, well, only the good guys will pass, right? Only the guys that walk like a duck, that quack like a duck, that actually seemingly are a duck. Maybe they have a certain OUI on the MAC address. Maybe they have certain SNMP characteristics on the network. Only those entities can actually enter the network. So it sort of took the world of NAC to a NAC on steroids kind of place. But
I think a lot of them, Joff, along those lines, have pivoted into being IoT security companies now. So it's like the ways around NAC have now become like their shining story because they worked so hard in R&D over the years to overcome that now they're like, oh, we can identify all these IoT devices. Hey, guess what? We're an IoT security company. Is it Forescout? I think it's Forescout that is messaging on that today.
Well, and I think the reason for that, what I was trying to get to there, Paul, was it became so complex to deploy that at an enterprise level. They decided that a sort of a niche market was a much better way to go, albeit not very small in its niche, but definitely a market that needed to be served. So it totally it's an interesting pivot, right?
Yes,
to that whole evolution of technology.
Well, thank you, Joff, and everyone else on the panel today. That will conclude this episode of Paul Security Weekly. Woo! Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. Nice to have you, Not Kevin. Nice to have you, Jeff and Joff. And, of course, Larry.
That's always nice to have me.
Always nice to have you in studio.
That's
hey, take us out,
Push the button. Push the button.
Over and